This summit today is a bit of a hybrid. We've got some virtual events going on and we've got some networking events happening as well. Everybody received the email this morning that kind of details everything that's going on throughout the week. If you miss anything, we are going to record all of our live sessions. So you'll be able to access those at any time after the fact, send them off to your staff, send them off to your friends. So again, thank you for joining us. It's a beautiful day out there, 18 degrees. We are excited to have all of you join us today, participating in the summit yet again this year. Welcome on behalf of your newly merged Peterborough and the Kawarthas Chamber of Commerce. We're honored again this year to be able to partner with Peterborough and the Kawarthas Economic Development to bring you the business summit every year. This partnership and the Team PTBO approach has positively impacted multiple businesses through the years, and not only through the programming and the business summit that we do together, but throughout the meaningful work that they provide for our region. So big shout out to our friends at Peterborough and the Kawarthas Economic Development. That being said, I'd like to introduce President and CEO of Peterborough and the Kawarthas Economic Development, Rhonda Keenan. Good morning and welcome, Rhonda.
Good morning, Tiffany, and welcome everybody. Good morning. It's so nice to be back. I wish we were still in person doing this, but at this point, we're so happy that we're able to have this forward-thinking business summit. Peterborough and the Kawarthas Economic Development is really pleased to partner with, and I love the new name, Peterborough and the Kawarthas Chamber of Commerce. It really is like we're partners now. Thank you for allowing me a few words. I do want to start off by thanking the coordinating committee who actually planned this great business summit. There were some great topics when I was taking a look. Finance is always important, managing conflicts, succession planning, sustainability, workforce and hiring, all of those things are so important to business, and there is really a little bit of something for everyone. And so I do hope that you are able to take advantage of all of these great topics. I think it's also important to recognize the work of the committee that you organized in a hybrid format. I guess this is what COVID has done for us, that our whole lives are in a hybrid format now, sometimes in person, sometimes digital, but it's great that we're able to get that information in front of everybody. And it's great that we also are able to do city and rural for the first time, which I love, because sometimes it's important to recognize that businesses operating in the city may need something a little bit different than businesses that are operating in a rural community. So I'm so grateful that you were able to include this in the summit overall. And again, we're forward thinking by doing all of these things. Knowing how the importance of rural and city working together is great for the overall region. So thanks for bringing these relevant topics. For the businesses that are attending today, I really hope and thank you for investing in your business by taking advantage of all of these topics that are available for you today. And certainly glad that our team is there to partner and support the Peterborough and the Chamber of Commerce in this summit, and have a great summit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. And I just wanted to take a moment to shout out our sponsors. If you take a moment today, follow our sponsors on their social channels, take a look at the content they've provided in the summit as well. There's a few pre-recorded workshops, an update. So big shout out to our summit sponsor, Business Development Bank of Canada, BDC. We appreciate you. Our profile sponsor, Nexicom, and of course our knowledge sponsors, Microwage Peterborough Whitby and Lynn Woodcroft, Royal LePage Frank Real Estate. On behalf of our business summit sponsor, BDC, I would like to introduce Michael Gastien, the Business Center Manager for the Business Development Bank of Canada. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks, Tiffany, and good morning, everyone. So like Tiffany said, my name is Michael, and I am the Business Center Manager for the BDC Peterborough branch. I'm delighted to welcome everyone this morning. We are very proud to be sponsoring this year's Business Summit. As the Bank of Canadian Entrepreneurs, BDC is proud to play an active role and partner with Peterborough businesses and the supporting community. Our business center specifically supports more than 265 local entrepreneurs with both financing and advisory that they need to grow and succeed. And if I may, I'd like to take the opportunity to recognize a few of my fellow BDC members who are here in the virtual crowd. So we have Heather Hallahan, Jody Burney, Shay Faisal, Stephanie Flab, Don Hennessy, and myself, and we make up the Peterborough BDC team. And we're more than excited for this week's events. both virtual and specifically the in-person events. So for those who didn't know, BDC provides both financing and advisory services to local businesses across Canada. We support entrepreneurs through the good times and the bad, and that has never been more critical than during the COVID-19 pandemic. When this all started in the spring of 2020, BDC acted as a shock absorber by participating in the broader government relief effort. We work closely with other institutions to design and implement the BCAP program, which is the Business Credit Availability Program. We authorize working capital loans for entrepreneurs who are impacted by COVID-19, 10 times more loans and 16 times more loan dollars than in normal times. In addition to all that, we also approved over 40,000 loan postponements to our clients. These are just a few examples. Our role is to support companies with the potential to make it through the rough patch, but also to support the growth plans of those companies who are looking to expand. And we continue to play this role responsibly. Our job is not only to lend money, our job is to provide guidance and financial support entrepreneurs need to succeed. We pride ourselves on understanding business owners and their companies, and we do our best to help them achieve their ambitions, be more resilient, and weather storms like this pandemic. Now, I have the distinct pleasure to introduce Pierre Cléroux, BDC's Chief Economist, and I'll give you a bit of info on Pierre. Pierre was appointed Vice President, Research and Chief Economist at BDC in 2012. Pierre leads a team of experts who analyze economic data to identify business and sector trends impacting the Canadian entrepreneurs. A seasoned speaker, he regularly travels across the country to help business owners understand the risks and opportunities presented by the economic environment. Pierre is also responsible for providing economic analysis and advice to the bank's senior management team and supervises all marketing and industry research activities. Over his 25-year career as an economist, he's held several influential positions that had a direct impact on entrepreneurs in Canada and abroad. Before joining BDC, Pierre worked for the government of Saudi Arabia as Vice President, Business Analysis in the National Industry Clusters Development Program. His role was to create program strategies, define sector policies, and conduct financial and economic analysis of industrial projects. Previously, Pierre was the Quebec Assistant Deputy Minister for Economic Development, Innovation, and Export and Trade, responsible for the implementation of economic policies and programs to support small and medium-sized businesses and encourage entrepreneurship. He was also a strategic advisor for Montreal International, where he was responsible for attracting foreign investment from India and the Middle East and developing international relationships and partnerships. He worked 12 years at the Canadian Federation of Independent Business in various roles, including economist and Quebec Vice President. He holds a Bachelor of Arts and a master's degree in economics from Laval University, as well as an MBA from MIT Sloan School of Management. Please join me in welcoming Pierre.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to share my screen. In one moment, we should all see my screen. So you should see my screen by now. So what I would like to do in the next 20 minutes, and we'll have time for question after that, it's three things. First, I'm going to talk about what you should expect in terms of the performance of the economy for Canada and also for Ontario. Second, I'm going to talk about the risk. As you know, there's a lot of turbulence in the economy right now. The pandemic is not over. I'm going to talk about that. There's the war in Ukraine. I'm going to talk about the impact of this war on the Canadian economy. And finally, three factors or three things that you should watch for as an entrepreneur. I'm going to talk about the increase of interest rate, the supply chain issues, and also the shortage of labor. So let's start with the economy. This is where we are in terms of the recovery. This is the number of jobs in the Canadian economy. We started the pandemic with over 19 million jobs in Canada. We lost 3 million jobs at the beginning, so that was quite a hit. We had a recession, but we have been recuperated all these jobs, and now there's actually 400,000 more jobs today than before the crisis. But the recovery has been quite different from one sector to another. You can see that at the top of the screen, ICT has been performing very well despite the pandemic. The level of economic activities is actually almost 10% higher than before the pandemic. But if you look at the bottom of the graph, you can see that some sectors were really affected by the pandemic. That's the case of accommodation and food services and arts, entertainment, and recreation. As you know, there was a lot of restriction because of COVID-19 on those sectors. So this is not surprising that these sectors have more difficulties to go back to the pre-crisis level. It should improve this year, but we're still missing the international tourism, which is really a drag on this sector, especially accommodation and food services. So what is going to drive growth this year for the Canadian and the Ontario economy? Well, let's look at Canada first. First, the good news is the unemployment rate is very low. It's at 5.3%. Actually, the unemployment rate for Ontario is the same at 5.3%. This is low. This is lower than what we had before the crisis. Actually, it's one of the lowest unemployment rates we have experienced in Canada. So many Canadians are working, and as a result, the disposable income or Canadians' revenue has been increasing. Despite the fact that we had a pandemic, our level of revenue is actually higher today than before the crisis. So as a result, people are spending money, and we see it. Consumption has increased by almost 5% in Canada, which is quite significant. Usually, the consumption doesn't increase by more than 1%. So 5% over the last 12 months, that's very significant. So consumers are going to be the number one source of growth for the economy in 2022. They have jobs, salaries are increasing, so they are going to spend money, and this is going to contribute to the Canadian economy. The second source of growth is coming from commodities. As you know, we produce a lot of commodities in Canada. In Ontario, for example, we produce nickel, lumber, a lot of agriculture commodities, and the price of these commodities has really increased over the last 12 months. It has increased even more with the war in Ukraine, and I'm going to come back to that. But even before the war, the commodity prices were up, and that's really helping the growth of the Canadian economy because we produce a lot of it. Finally, our export is a source of growth as well. We'll continue to do so because the US economy is performing very well. And as you know, 80% of everything we export is going to the US. So when the US economy is performing well, we export more, and this is going to be another source of growth for the Canadian economy this year. The Ontario economy now, well, the situation is a bit similar. The level of jobs is back to the pre-crisis level. There's actually 200,000 more jobs in Ontario than before the crisis. A bit of the same pattern. We lost a lot of jobs at the beginning, but 2021 was a good recovery year. Growth was over 5% in Ontario, and as a result, the level of jobs has really improved. The unemployment rate right now in Ontario is 5.3%. This is the lowest unemployment rate for the last 40 years. And consumption is driving the growth, just like in Canada. Consumption has also increased by 5%. And this is going to continue this year as a lot of people in Ontario save money over the last 2 years. This is a level of saving in Ontario. You can see that during the pandemic, a lot of people save more money. That's not unusual during the recession. Typically, consumers will save money because of the uncertainty. Also, as you recall, there was a lot of restrictions on the economy for 2 years. So it's easier to save when you cannot travel, when it's, most of the time restaurants are closed. So that's explaining why the saving rates has been increasing. But this is important because this is going to be a source of consumption for 2022 and maybe for 2023. Part of these savings is going to be spent and is going to stimulate the economy. Consumers are also responsible for the housing market. As you probably know, the housing market has been performing very well. The graph is showing the increase in the average price of a home in Ontario. As you can see, the price has been increasing. Very strong demand, low interest rate has really helped the housing market. This is going to slow down this year as interest rates are increasing. We expect this market to cool down. It's not going to go down really, but it's going to slow down. The growth, we don't expect the same growth for the next 2 years. And we have seen prices are very elevated, interest rates are increasing, but the market is going to remain good because A lot of people have a job, salaries are increasing. But this is good for the economy. When the housing market is hot, we built more houses, and that's exactly what's happening in Ontario. And we see these numbers are even higher today than before the pandemic. This is important. This is the reason why this 34,000 more jobs in construction in Ontario than before the crisis. So the housing market is helping the economy. On the manufacturing side, manufacturing is back to the pre-crisis level, is actually higher by $3 billion, and there's actually more jobs in manufacturing today. There's about 12,000 more jobs today in manufacturing in Ontario than before the crisis. There's one exception, I would say, to that. Transportation equipment has been performing well, but not as well as expected. And the reason is for the automotive sector. As you may know, we have supply chain issues. It's very hard to find parts, especially semiconductors. And as a result, our export of motor vehicles has not been back to the pre-crisis level. It was back right after the crisis, but over the last, over 2021, because of the supply chain disruptions, this sector has been slowing down a little bit. There's not a lack of demand for cars. It's actually the demand is strong in North America. It's more on the supply chain. So this should improve in 2022, but it might take a bit more time. We might have to wait until 2023 before we go back to normal. So in both Canada and Ontario, as you can see, this is pretty positive. Consumers are going to spend more. Our exports are doing well. Commodity prices are increasing. But there's a number of risks to the economy. And I'm going to talk about the two most important ones. The first one, the pandemic is not over. This is a number of cases in Canada. You can see that Omicron at the beginning of the year was huge. The number of cases in Canada was very important. But we have another wave. There's no consensus, but actually the number of cases in Ontario and in Canada is increasing. So what would be the impact on the economy? Well, we believe the impact is going to be quite limited for two reasons. First, our level of vaccination is very high now. So we are much more prepared to see another wave of the virus than before, than a year ago or 2 years ago. 81% of everybody in Ontario has been vaccinated. 82% in Canada, very similar. But look at this graph. We have the highest level of vaccination among the developed economy. So this is a very good sign. We actually did very well in Canada in terms of vaccination. And this is going to protect the economy because when you are vaccinated in general, people are not as sick. So this is really protecting people and also the economy. Also, when we look over the last 2 years, we realize that the biggest part of the economy is not affected as much by the virus or by COVID-19 than before. We split the economy in two here. In green, you have accommodation and food services, and in blue, you have the rest of the economy. So during each wave, when the government puts restriction on the economy, it does have an impact on accommodation and food service. Even the fifth wave, Omicron, had quite an impact on that sector. But if you look at the blue line, beside the first wave, the impact on the economy has been very small. Actually, the general economy has been growing despite the fact that we were during a pandemic. So the pandemic is not over, but the impact on the Canadian and Ontario economy is pretty much over, except for some sectors like accommodation and food services. Also, we see the impact on the supply chain disruption, and I'm going to come back to that. But overall, despite the fact it's a risk, we don't believe it's going to slow down the economy this year. The second risk is the impact of the war in Ukraine. The biggest impact is on the commodity prices. Commodity prices has been increasing because Ukraine and Russia are big producer of commodities. So for example, here you see the price of oil. I'm sure you saw the price of the gasoline has been increasing. Everybody is paying more now. So the WTI is higher than $100 a barrel. We haven't seen that for a long time, since 2014. Energy is not the only one impacted. The price of wheat has been increasing. That means that the price of food is going to be higher in the next 6 months. And the price of minerals and metals has been increasing. As you know, in Ontario, we produce a lot of nickel, so the price of nickel has really jumped up. So this is the first impact of the war. The second impact is on immigration. Immigration is increasing in Canada. More people from Ukraine is coming to the country. We have to look back to the crisis in Syria to see the impact on our labor force. You see on this graph what happened during the crisis in Syria. We accepted a lot of people from Syria, and as a result, our labor force increased, which is actually positive for Canada because, as you know, we have a shortage of labor. So if we look at the positive and negative impact, on the positive side, higher commodity prices will actually benefit the Canadian economy across the country. Immigration will also help the Canadian economy. The direct impact on our export is very small. Canadian export to Russia represent 0.1% of our total export, so it's almost nothing. There's going to be some negative impact. When you increase commodity prices, you increase prices to consumer. For example, the price of gasoline, the price of food. So this is going to have a negative impact on the Canadian economy, a lot of uncertainty, and also businesses are paying more for a lot of their supply. But we believe actually that if we take the positive and the negative, the impact on the Canadian economy is going to be very limited. Some economists actually revise their forecast up because they believe that higher commodity prices will benefit more the country than the negative side. We're not sure, but definitely we believe that the economy, the impact of the war in Ukraine is going to have a very limited impact on the Canadian economy. So as a result, despite all these turbulence, we believe that the Canadian economy is going to have a strong 2022 and a strong 2023. Same thing for Ontario economy. This is our forecast for Canada, 3.5% growth, which is quite elevated. The potential growth of the Canadian economy is 2%. So at 3.5, we are actually in a very red hot economy. Same thing in Ontario, where the economy is going to grow about at the same pace, maybe a little bit higher than the Canadian average, maybe around 3.7, 3.8%. So despite the turbulence, we believe that the economy will continue to grow. Having said that, there's three things that we believe businesses should watch for. The good news is the demand for your products and services is going to be strong for 2022. Consumers have money, our exports are performing well. So in almost every sector of the economy, you should face a very strong demand. The challenge is going to be on the supply side. First, interest rates are increasing because inflation is very high. This is the level of inflation in Canada, 6.7% now. As you can see from this graph, this is really unusual for Canada. Before the crisis, the inflation was around 2%. There's a number of reasons for that. A strong demand, like I've showed before, the demand for consumption has increased by 5%. Very difficult time in terms of supply chain. There's a lot of supply chain disruption. I'm going to talk about that a bit later. And also, higher commodity prices is having an impact on prices. And unfortunately, the war in Ukraine is just going to accelerate that. So we should forecast, our forecast is inflation is going to remain high this year. And definitely this will have an impact on interest rate. Interest rate has already increased. They will continue to increase for two reasons. First, the economy is performing well, so there's no need to keep interest rate low. Actually, if you keep interest rate low for too long, you create distortions. The housing market is a good example for that. And also, if there's a lot of inflation pressure, so it's a good time to increase interest rate. You should expect more increase in terms of interest rate in 2022. We'll probably conclude the year with a prime rate around 2%, maybe even at 2.25%. And at the end of 2023, interest rate should be between 2.5 and 3%. So let me reassure you, interest rates are not going to jump to 5, 6, or 7%, but they are going to increase this year. I think the Bank of Canada their goal is to go back to a neutral rate, which is between 2 and 3%. So you should expect an increase in interest rate in 2022. The second issue is on the supply side. Many Canadian businesses are facing disruptions in their supply chain, especially when they buy outside the country. 63% experience longer delivery times. 56% have even difficulties to get their raw materials, their component, or their products. I was talking to a client last week, and he said that in February, he received 3 containers from China, one that he ordered 8 months ago, one that he ordered 3 months ago, and one that he ordered a month ago. So he got the 3 containers the same week. So like he said, how can you manage a business when you have that? So this is a big issue. One of the reasons for that is coming from China. China has a zero COVID-19 policy. So when there's a number of cases in a manufacturing plant, they shut down the plant. Today, 45 cities are in a full or partial lockdown in China. This represents 40% of the GDP. So a big part of the supply chain disruptions is coming from China. And the other issue is the cost of shipping has really increased. Here, for example, in yellow, you see the cost of shipping between China and the East Coast. And this cost went from $2,500 before the pandemic to almost $18,000 now. So it's costing more, it's much more volatile, and it's much more difficult. So what should we expect? Well, because of the war in Ukraine, which is making the situation even worse, we believe that these issues of the supply chain is going to take another year before we go back to normal. So the pandemic will have to be over, so the situation will go back to normal in Asia. Also, hopefully the war is going to be over, but you should expect the supply chain disruptions to continue for the next 12 months. It should really improve, but only in 2023. The other issue is the labor shortage. You probably have difficulties to recruit people now. 67% of Ontarian entrepreneurs have difficulties to recruit. And the main reason is because we have an aging population. In 2021, 18% of people in Ontario were over 65. This compared to only 13% in the year 2000. So baby boomers are leaving the workplace to retire, which is totally normal, but there's a lot of them. So as a result, that's the reason why we have difficulties to recruit. I think this graph is really the most telling one. Today, 22% of workers in Ontario are over 55 years old. That means that in the next 10 years, most of these people are going to retire. So that's 20% of our workforce in Ontario are going to retire in the next 10 years. This was only 10% in March 2000. So you see the aging population and its impact on the labor force. So, and the pandemic made things worse because for almost 2 years, we didn't have the level of immigration we used to. This is the numbers for Ontario. We're missing about 200,000 people. A lot of them will have work and will be part of our labor force. So that makes the situation worse. And 20% of workers moved to another sector, especially in accommodation and food services. When people lost their job, because the economy is performing well, they decided to work somewhere else. So in overall, 60% of Canadian businesses have difficulties to recruit. These numbers go up to 78% in manufacturing because this sector is growing. Like I said, there's 12,000 more people working in manufacturing in Ontario. So they are looking for people. And for accommodation and food services, the situation is as difficult, even if they don't hire as much. It's just because people left this sector for another sector. So what are the solutions? Well, there's no easy solution and there's no magic bullet, but we produce a report that you can find for free on our website at www.bdc.ca. And we look at 1,500 companies across the country. We look at what they are doing with success. What are the most successful strategies? And the number one by far is investing in technology and automation, because technology doesn't replace people, but it replaces tasks. And as a result, you don't need as many people to work for you. So as a lot of, it's going to be more costly and more difficult to recruit. Investing in technology and automation is actually the best solution for you. Of course, you cannot replace, for example, a truck driver by a robot, at least not for now, but you can introduce a lot of automation in every sector of the economy that will replace tasks and that will free up some of your labor. Number two, use a more formal hiring process. In our research, we find that a lot of SMEs, a lot of small business, they hire through their network. Well, maybe that was a good strategy in the past, but now there's a war for talent. Everybody's looking for talent. So you have to sell yourself. You have to market yourself as a good employer. You have to market on social media. This is where the new generation is looking for a job. So it's very important to be proactive. Third, it's important to offer a total compensation package that is competitive. We don't put salary here because a compensation package, it's much bigger than salary. It's include benefits, it includes flexibility of work, for example, everything. I was in a meeting, I was giving a conference in London, Ontario a few weeks ago, and somebody in a client was saying that what works for them in the manufacturing sector, they provide food. Apparently the new generation, they really like food. So by providing food on the workplace seems to have a good impact on retention. So everything works. The important is to have a competitive compensation package. And finally, it's important to expand our hiring pool. Despite the fact that the unemployment rate is very low, 5.3% in Ontario, the unemployment rate for young people below 25 years old, it's actually over 10%. So we all want to hire people with experience, but there's a pool of workers. Of course, you have to train them, you have to coach them, but this is actually a good pool of workers. Same thing for people who are immigrant. Their unemployment rate is actually much higher than people who are born in Canada. So in conclusion, we're going to have a very good year in 2022. The demand for our products and services is going to be strong. And despite the turbulence, despite the end of the pandemic, despite the war in Ukraine, the Canadian and the Ontario economy both are going to perform very well. However, there's some challenges, and the challenges on the supply side. Interest rates are going to increase. They are going to continue to increase because of the inflation pressure. Supply chains are going to improve, but very slowly. We'll have to wait probably another 12 months before this goes back to normal. And labor shortage, it's here to stay. Unfortunately, we have an aging population, and we have to think about what is the best strategy for our business in this current context where it's so difficult to recruit. So I'm going to stop here. I would be happy to take your questions.
Excellent. Wow, what a fantastic breakdown. And I feel so positive, like such just breathing life into 2022, 2023 for us. Thank you so much, Pierre. We really, really appreciate it. I did put in the chat, if anyone has any questions, you can drop them in the chat. You can unmute yourself, raise your hand, I'll unmute you. But we can also, I did have a couple questions. Look, they're coming in right now. Mr. Cléroux, how do you expect inflation, specifically high energy costs to, sorry, my screen just blipped on me. Mr. Cléroux, how do you expect inflation, specifically high energy costs, to affect industrial businesses in the next few years?
Well, it's an increase in the cost and definitely squeezing a profit. But the good news is the demand for the manufacturing sector is very strong and should remain strong for at least the next 2 years. So the positive side is the demand is strong. The negative side, it costs more in terms of supply. And on the energy side, it will really depend on the war in Ukraine. As you know, Russia is a big producer of oil and gas, and that's the reason why the price is so high right now. If we, and it's not going to happen, but if the war ends tomorrow, well, the oil price is going to go down. So it's very hard to predict at this point. And the price will really depend of this war in Ukraine.
I had a couple come in directly to me. Businesses are struggling to recruit enough workers. Seeing the unemployment is quite low, is it really just immigration and immigration that will fill our workforce needs, or what else can be done?
Well, this is a very good question. Immigration is going to help, but it's not going to be enough. For example, 20% of workers in Ontario are going to retire in the next 10 years. So that's 4 million people. That's actually more than 4 million people. That's a lot of people for Canada. So we are, the level of immigration is about 500,000 every year. So this is not going to be enough. That's the reason why we believe that businesses have to think about the best strategy. The strategy is different for every business, for every sector. But like I said, technology, automation, it's a great response to that. It's actually the best strategy that the business can use. We often talk about automation in the manufacturing sector because you can replace some tasks by automation, but it's also true in services. In our report, we take the example of this drugstore where the pharmacist couldn't find technician, and they decided to buy this sorting machine, and it's working very well, and it actually replaced a number of technicians. So we have to be creative. It's a good time to invest because revenues are increasing, and because this problem is not going to go away. So, if the problem was going to go away in 6 months, maybe it's not worth investing. But because of our aging population, actually, it's worth investing because we're going to have this issue for a number of years.
Excellent, excellent answer. There's a couple more I've got here. High commodity prices are working for our economy as a whole, but what does it mean for small and medium businesses outside the resource industry and resource communities? Can it work for them too, and how?
Well, this is a difficult situation for a lot of small business because they have to pay more for their supply. And in some cases, they are able to pass the price to consumers. In other cases, they are not. And so it's squeezing margin right now. And we are well aware of that. We have a number of tools to help business to go through this situation. So in some cases, it's squeezing margins. It's not only that the cost is increasing, but because it's very difficult to get the supply, a lot of businesses are investing in more inventory. So obviously, this is also a cost for the business. So this is a very difficult situation right now. And tell you a good example of a client I met a few weeks ago, and he's in the packaging business, and he's selling to major companies, which I won't name. But so he's paying more for his plastic, for his input, but he's not able to increase its price because he's selling to very large corporations, which obviously have a lot of power. So his margin is squeezed, and this is going to be the situation for a while. So it's not an easy time for a lot of businesses because these prices are increasing.
Excellent. I've had a couple more come in. One more on commodity. How have commodity prices hit the agricultural sector? Cost to produce food is up significantly from fertilizer to fuel. Are the prices they will be able to sell for enough to offset the high input costs?
Well, it's going to. This person is perfectly right. It costs more for fertilizers. The price of potash has increased significantly, which is one of the big inputs in fertilizers. It costs more for energy. So the cost of producing is increasing, and it depends on the sector. In some sectors, farmers are going to be able to pass part of the increase in the cost to consumers. But unfortunately, it's not possible in every sector. It depends on, what you produce, what you sell. But we should all expect an increase in food price in the next 6 months because of already what happened, but also Ukraine is a big producer of wheat. They are not able to plant right now. So that means that at the end of the summer, the price of wheat is just going to explode. And that's one example. The soybean is going to be the same. So we should all expect that price of food is going to increase this year.
Excellent. Another one came in. What kind of effects would a prolonged slowdown of the Chinese economy have on businesses in Canada?
Well, the biggest impact is on our supply chain. We import a lot of products from China. We don't export that much, and we basically export commodities, like a lot of agriculture commodities. So the biggest impact is on our supply chain. There's a lot of disruptions because of the number of cases and because of the zero tolerance policy in China. We were hoping that the situation will improve this year. Now we understand it's going to take a bit more time. The sixth wave in China is actually much more important than it is in Canada. So it's going to take more time before the situation goes back to normal. But the biggest impact is on the supply chain disruptions.
We have a thank you so much for the presentation. Are we seeing a meaningful increase in nearshoring to deal with offshore supply chain delays and uncertainty?
That's a very good question. And that's something we have looked for since the beginning of the pandemic. We thought 2 years ago that we would see a lot of reshoring, but we haven't. And when we look at the numbers, like our import from China or from Asia is actually stronger today, is higher today than in 2020. So we are not reshoring, we're not producing more in Canada. It's hard to understand why, probably because of the cost difference. Despite all the disruptions, despite the cost of the container that has been increasing, it seems that it's still, worth importing from China. Also, the issue here also is we have a shortage of labor. So it's difficult for Canadian businesses to produce more or to produce differently because it's difficult to find people. But we're not sure why is that, but definitely reshoring is not happening.
Another excellent answer, Pierre. It's like we gave these to you in advance. But promise, we didn't. He's live. I've got last one coming in for you. What is the current impact on the Canadian currency? Are we high, low? What is the expectation for the rest of the year?
Right now, we're a bit high. We're at 79.80 cents, depending of the day. And the reason for that is commodity prices has been increasing, and we produce and we export a lot of them. So that means that there's more demand for the Canadian dollar. And we expect that commodity prices will remain elevated this year. So we expect the Canadian dollar to stay elevated, like around 80, 81 cents for the rest of the year. As the situation go back to normal in 2023, well, the dollar should go down a little bit. But for the rest of 2022, we expect the dollar to remain strong, around 80 cents.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Pierre Cléroux. Just remarkable information today. You kind of had me on every word. Our keynote speaker, chief economist from the Business Development Bank of Canada, Pierre, big round of applause for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the good questions. Great discussion.
We've recorded it all. So if you want to kind of rewatch, see what Pierre had to say, we'll get that out on our social channels. Also, just a huge shout out to BDC. Somebody put in the comments at the Lake Distributing, big shout out to BDC for their financial support and strategic advice over the last year. I love to see stuff like that coming through our chat. So thank you for sharing at the Lake. We appreciate it. We appreciate the entire BDC team for carving out time today, and of course our partners Peterborough and the Kawarthas Economic Development. If you want to reach out to BDC, if you're looking for contact information, you can reach right out to me. I'll connect you. I also have a couple of their teammates on this call. Michael, Heather, you can reach out to the team there. We've got Jody on the call as well. So once again, thank you everyone for joining us today. This kicked off our business summit for the rest of the week at 12 o'clock. Meet us at the Canoe and Paddle downtown Lakefield for some networking. They've got specials going on as well. And once again, this event does not happen without the generous support of our sponsors, our summit sponsor, Business Development Bank of Canada, BDC. We appreciate you. Our profile sponsor, Nexicom, and of course, our knowledge sponsors, MicroAge, Peterborough Whitby, and Lynn Woodcroft, Royal LePage Frank Real Estate. Thank you for joining us today. Please tag your PTBO and Kawarthas Chamber of Commerce on social channels. Also tag our partners, ACDEV, Peterborough and the Kawarthas Economic Development. Today, again, 12 o'clock, meet at Canoe and Paddle for some Lakefield networking. It's going to be 18 degrees. The sun is out right now. We are going to be on that patio. It's a perfect place to be doing business. And tomorrow on the agenda, 12 o'clock, we're going to be at the Ashfidel Norwood Town Hall. And then at 2 o'clock, we've got Savino Human Resources Partners doing a live Zoom webinar on harnessing productive conflict, how to get through those tough conversations with employees, with staff, with each other. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. Pierre, you're just remarkable. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Michael, Rondon, the PKED team, we appreciate it. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Stay safe, and we'll see you online.